Hello and welcome to our second half of the league in Champman Sevens. So I'll be running through a video with you guys today, which tells you everything you need to know if you're joining the game for the first time, and also gives us data on the second half of the league. So for those new players, so you can see here, so each week you pick 7 players. So a goalkeeper can be either a home and away. And then you pick a home and away defender, home and away mid, and a home and away forward. You must pick a player from 7 different clubs. Wing backs are classified as defenders, and AMCs and DMCs are classified as mids. That will change every week as you are given the starting lineups a few days in advance before the deadline, every Thursday at 7 o'clock. So you can see here the point system. So again, goals, so 6 points for defenders, 5 midfielders, 4 forwards. Assists, 4 across the board, apart from 3 with a forward. -3 for a penalty missed. You get half-point clean sheets. So if, for example, you have Ian Hart and he's playing for Leeds, again, and Leeds win the game 1-0, he would again score 6 points by the end of that. If they drew 1-1, he would get 3 defensive points for the end of that. Get minus points for 3 goals conceded and for yellow and red cards. Goalkeepers get points for saves and penalty saves. And again, if a player scores a 9 at the end of the game, they get an extra point, and 10, they get an extra 2. If they get a man of the match, they get an extra 2 on top of that as well. So the point system's really easy. Did find that actually it leads us to more focusing on defenders and midfielders. It's normally a game where obviously strikers are always your first pick. I found strikers aren't always my first pick when I pick my team. And I kind of concentrate on clean sheets, which has helped me get to number 1 in the world at the moment. Right, so the season long data. So here's everything about the player database and everything you need to know about the game. So here is our current league table. We're possibly 1 game behind there at the moment on the left-hand side. So you can see Man United, Arsenal, Leeds, Chelsea, Liverpool, Borough, Sunderland, West Brom, and so on. Down here in the white, so I ran 10 sims, and I took each team's highest position and lowest position, which you can see there. So some teams are always up there. So as you can see, Man United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Newcastle generally there. And their average league position, which they are ranked here. So this kind of tells you the strength of your teams. So ideally, the best fixture in the game would be Man United at home v Charlton. You would expect them to score very well there. And again, for example, let's say you've got Sunderland at home to Birmingham. That would also be a strong fixture for Sunderland. And you can kind of work it out and always go for this. I think Middlesbrough are overperforming a little bit this season. You can see they normally finish much lower down. Newcastle, Spurs, and Everton probably a bit below expectations. I think you should always target the likes of Everton, Southampton, Charlton, and West Ham. They seem to concede a lot of goals, and those could be the teams that you go against. Arsenal, Chelsea, Sunderland, Newcastle, Leeds are always attacking players that you would look to get in with a fixture. You do really have to judge the game each week on the sim data I release and seeing what the fixtures are. So, for example, if you've got Chelsea away at Arsenal, that may kind of block both teams. It could be a low scoring game. And maybe, I don't know, Man City at home to Everton would be a much better fixture to get points. So we'll talk about that week on week as it comes. So Man United are miles ahead. So this just breaks it down a little bit more, shows a little bit more of the goals scored. So interesting here. So in the goals scored, even though I would say Liverpool are a really strong team in this and they have a high average league position, they score pretty low. So they don't score a lot of goals, but they're able to concede them. Arsenal, Newcastle, Chelsea, Sunderland, Tottenham, Leeds, and Fulham, always good for goals. Charlton, Birmingham, and Southampton can't seem to score very much. And Everton, West Brom, Villa, and Man City may struggle, as I've discussed. Liverpool there, and I think Newcastle are quite underestimated on this game. So Liverpool are the clear defensive options. However, their defenders don't seem to haul. Charlton have the leakiest, so we can target them with a few other teams. We'll break down individual ones as you are here, but yeah, as you can see, Liverpool second overall ranked team in the league, best defensive record, but only the 9th highest scoring record, which may prioritise you to pick defenders rather than your Michael Owens and so forth moving forward. A few other interesting numbers there. I suppose Fulham are quite low down in the table, but they do score 8th in goals scored. But again, they're quite high in the goals conceded against as well. West Brom, about middle of the table, but their defensive record is really strong, but their goal scoring record is 17th. So yeah, so it's knowing things like that, like maybe West Brom, yeah, actually we can pick defenders from their team, but we'll rarely pick attackers unless it's that plum home fixture of a West Brom via Charlton or so forth. So yeah, you can refer to this at any time, but this just ranks the team in their order of ability. That's how I see it in the league. Man United are the best, Liverpool are the second, Arsenal, Newcastle, Leeds, and so forth. Blackburn have had a new manager recently. So I haven't run sims with the new data for Blackburn, but I'd expect them to finish a little bit higher up the league now, maybe around that Tottenham Sunderland mark with that new manager. So it seems to be a good appointment. Villa have made a appointment as well this season as of West Ham, but Villa slightly improved, West Ham slightly improved, but not as much as I expect Blackburn to be moving forward. Right, so here's about the players. So over 10 sims. So you can see Van Nistelrooy here, 10 in the first one, 39 in the second. So this is goals and assists combined. And Ruud Van Nistelrooy has scored 316 returns over 10 seasons. That's almost 100 more than any player. However, in this sim, he seems to be a bit of a troll and not doing that well. Henry, as we'll move on to later, is a top scorer. But yeah, these names are the players that, especially when they've got a home fixture, you need to be looking for. Van Nistelrooy, Henry, Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, Alan Shearer, Kevin Phillips, Viduka, Flo. I actually prefer Flo over Phillips due to the penalty takers. Sava for Fulham is again quite a high goal scorer. Idika Johnson, Forlan, they're kind of the second striker to the Van Nistelrooys and Hasselbanks, but they have games where they obviously do much better. Anelka's pretty good, Andy Cole and Dwight York as well. You can see various players on this list down there, again, from your likes of your Jermaine Defoe's, your Robbie Fowlers, Jason Yules, and so forth. So lots of good options you could pick. It's all about the team and the fixtures. Certain players are very hot and cold, so Anelka cold, Armstrong, Canute, Morrison. So you'll see certain seasons where they just seem to go off, and certain seasons where they're much quieter. So, for example, Freddie Canute there in the middle, 23 returns one season, 6 in another. So it does depend again on the sim that is playing. Right, looking at midfielders here. So Robbie Keane actually tops the chart here. I know some of you may think he's a striker, but for Spurs, he plays in the AMC role just behind Sergei Rebrov in most games. So he comes out on top with Beckham, Veron, Giggs, Claudio Reyna, Kieran Dyer, Vieira, Joe Cole, Sheringham, Zola, and Johnston of Middlesbrough. Lots of other good players in that list. Everyone on this list on their day is capable of scoring well. I think over time, you probably want to pick one of these, all averaging above 9 returns a season. As again, you can see certain seasons where these players, even towards the bottom of this list, have done really well. I'm looking at Stolkers, Ray Parler down there, having 20 returns in one season, but you can see other seasons where he hasn't even got anything at all. So it does depend on that too. Defenders, so Hart and Gardner clearly stand out miles above the rest. Really good attacking returns from those players. Lots of high ratings. Ian Hart's generally on penalties and free kicks. Gardner just has the ability to get 9 and 10 average ratings. Robbie Savage up there for Birmingham. They play wing-backs. Tirico, if he starts for Tottenham. You can see Clement in there for West Brom, which shows you how solid their defence is. Stanek and Babayaro, the Chelsea wing-backs, are very strong. Babayaro's had a very strong season so far. And the likes of Silvestri at Man United are pretty good as well. Some, I suppose, unknowns in the list there. Laban, we'll talk about him later for West Ham on penalties. Arsenal defenders, maybe Gilberto, even though that's not the name you would think of, especially if you're new to the game. I find when he plays in defence, he scores the most points for them there. Right, penalties. So this is something you don't need to consider too much, but I took a list of which players have taken the most penalties for their team. Some teams it's really hard to call. So looking at Arsenal, really hard to call who's going to take a penalty from. It seems to be one of a list of many. Some teams with higher numbers, you can see the penalty takers are more nailed. So, for example, when Blackburn have a penalty, I'm pretty sure it's York, Stern John for Birmingham, Armstrong for Bolton, Ian Hart for Leeds, Danny Murphy for Liverpool, Steve Harry for Manchester City, David Beckham for Man United, Alan Shearer for Newcastle, Flo for Sunderland, and Labant for West Ham, alongside the Canio as well. So sometimes, it can be different in this sim. For example, Ugo Akiog only has 4 pens over the 10 sims here, but he's taken 2 in our sim so far. So it looks like a season where his stat makes him good for penalties. So keep an eye on who takes penalties, because obviously it's 3 points there sometimes if you pick it right. This just orders it a bit better, so you can see which teams have the most penalties. Man United seem to get a lot more penalties than other teams. Liverpool, Sunderland, Chelsea, kind of those attacking teams often get them as well. I don't really think too much behind this data. It's just something to show you who the penalty takers are and how often they can happen, I suppose. Right, so unbelievably, not you would expect, halfway through the season, our highest scoring player of the game is Nigel Martin of Leeds. So you can see there he's managed to get 10 first half clean sheets and 14 second half clean sheets, along with making 74 saves along the way. So that has led him, despite only getting 1 of the match and 3 bonus points, he's got the top scores. He's played every minute, and it shows you how important those defenders are. Again, looking at that list there, Thierry Henry at the bottom there is the first striker to appear on that list, which shows you that the points weighed, Hasselbank's in there as well. The points weighed are, I think, linked to picking stronger defenders. So, for example, even if I've got Man United with a good game, I would be thinking more about Silvestre to get me safer points. I think, okay, might definitely get 6 clean sheet points here, rather than gambling on Van Nistelrooy, who may play, score 1, and only get 4 points. So that's one way in which I've tried to play the game. It took a few weeks to figure out, but yeah, I definitely almost tried to pick my defenders and midfielders first. You can see some midfielders in that list as well, because again, when they score well, or they have a game where they score a couple or get a couple of assists, they really, really do well. Okay, breaking it down into goal scorers in the league so far. So Thierry has 14 goals. Jimmy Fuller, Hasselbank, Ruud and Phillips with 12. Shearer and Saville with 11. Pedersen with 10, and so on. You can see Johnston of Middlesbrough there with 9. Zola and Keane also midfielders with 7. So again, strikers mainly scoring the points. But you can see in the totals on the right, it doesn't matter too much because you've only got to earn these players per week. It's just about picking which striker has the best fixture for that week. Assists now in orders. So Vieira's top of the list at the moment, and you've got Beckham, Pires, Ali Benarbia of Man City. Thomas Jacob Bolton's done really well this year. Jimmy and so on. So shared around between various positions, mainly midfielders and forwards. And again, good way to get points. I often sometimes pick players not expecting them to score, but hoping they will get me assists within the game too. Right, a breakdown of each team now. So I would say you can look at this each game week, especially if you're new to it and you're unsure about what you want from that team. So, for example, if Arsenal have a good fixture, what do we know about Arsenal? Well, they're a good team. They can finish as high as second, as low as 6th. They are the second highest scorers in the league. They concede the 3rd best team for conceding goals. Looking down at a breakdown of positions, so you can see the defenders are pretty close. Gilberto just edging it. Lauren and Ashley Cole are good players, but they don't seem to get a lot of returns. I generally go for more the Arsenal attacking outfits. Some games, you might want to focus on them defensively. I would often pick Vieira or Henry when I'm looking to pick an Arsenal player. So very low scoring defender, so the attack rather than defense, big spread, hard to call in midfield. Yeah, that's the problem. They've got so many good midfielders. It is hard to pick the right one. You might have a week where you go for Vieira and then Pires and Ljungberg go off. You can see they've signed Nobby Solano this year. Ray Parler's a good player. Bergkamp has been sold this year, so he won't be in the game. Penalty takers there, again, listed below. So we're just going to go through this for each team briefly, and you can come back to this as and when you want it. Aston Villa, so not that good. 15th in terms of goals, 14th in terms of goals against. Dela Cruz has had a couple of good returns this year. I think if you do go for a defender, it's him or Wright, who seems to be on free kicks and penalties sometimes. Midfielders, they have just signed a new player called Kaffour. I'd say he's slightly better than Lee Hendry, so he might be the better midfield option for now. Strikers, Angel's not having a good season. Peter Crouch almost seems to start playing now. I generally wouldn't pick Villa strikers. I haven't done it, and I don't think I will. Right, Birmingham City, my team. So sadly, they concede the 17th most and only score 19th in the league in scoring goals. Excuse me. So you don't want to pick them that often. Savage is a good option at wing back though at times. Darren Purse has had a few returns this year, and Kenny Cunningham also scoring well on points for man of the matches. Brian Hughes plays in an AMC role, which is always a position I like to pick. And you've got Stern, John and Morrison who can. Again, you wouldn't pick them very often, but Birmingham at home to a weak opposition, yeah, possibly a striker depending on other fixtures, or Robbie Savage or Hughes could be a good pick for you. Blackburn, so a new manager, so I expect them to be slightly improved. I don't think they have any good defensive options. Even when they play wing backs, it seems to be Bjornaby. If they start playing David Thompson, who's normally a midfielder, as a wing back, he could become a good defensive option if they manage to keep a few more clean sheets. Two-guy, pretty steady in terms of returns in midfield. Hignett can be a good player when he gets a game. Wasn't getting him under the old manager. I think he starts to emerge in the second half of the season. Dunn and Duff, again, quality players in real life. Not that good on this game. They're okay. I don't think you're going to pick them most weeks. Andy Cole and Dwight York both can score goals. I think Will underneath the new manager. Depends who it is. They might play one up front at times in this. Dwight York's on penalties, which gives him over the edge for Andy Cole for me. But Andy Cole's goal returns have been slightly better. Andy Cole also had a hat-trick this year, which was pretty big. Bolton. So if you're going to pick a Bolton defender, it's Gardner. He's a good player to pick, but Bolton concede goals. So it's just hard to pick that right game where Bolton don't concede many goals and then Gardner can do well for you. JJ Okocha is a great player. He's done really well. And you've got Tomaszek and so on. Pedersen can sometimes play behind the strikers, really good when he's there. Armstrong's a pretty decent striker as well. Disappointed in a few times where he's had good fixtures this year, but I expect him to come good at some time. Charlton, so again, technically the worst team in the league for goals and against. So you're never really going to pick a Charlton player. I think if you do, Jensen and Blomqvist can have good matches, good home matches occasionally. Jason Ewell, I think I did pick him once this season. With the right fixture, they can be okay, but the 99% of the games you're avoiding Charlton. Chelsea have done really well. Good, strong season for them as well. Two good wing backs, Stanek and Babayaro, seem to play there both weeks. Babayaro is actually outperforming Stanek this year. Zola does really well for Chelsea. He plays just behind the strikers, so he can get some good returns. Helped me with a couple of goals last week. Jimmy Floyd Housebank is quality, having a really good season. And Johnson, you can pick either of those. A majority of time, I pick a Chelsea player, unless it's that rare week when they're away to Man United. I'm having a Chelsea player most weeks. Everton, I'm not having an Everton player most weeks. They have a couple of weeks where they're generally okay defensively. I think they're playing Charlton this week, so that might be a good week to have Everton in, for example. Nothing really defensively. Naismith and Watson average fullbacks. Unsworth can be on penalties. Gravison is their best player. Again, if you want to go for a midfield punt, Gravison can be quite good there. And strikers are poor. Wayne Rooney starting to emerge and get a few starts now. He never scores that well in the first season. I often see him play about 20 games and maybe score 2-3 goals. I actually think he'll score this week, but I wouldn't be looking at the name of Wayne Rooney. He's not quite ready in this game yet. Fulham score quite well. Again, I'd probably not have the defenders. If you're going to, Harley's probably the better option there. Midfielders, John Collins is steady. Lots of goals and assists. He's pretty good. Burmore, Ace Stolkers, Steve Malbronk, Legwinski. Sava is the better striker for me over Marley. So they concede a lot, but they can score. Attackers and midfielders, always an option, but I'd avoid the back line of Fulham always. Leeds, Nigel Martin is top scorer in the game at the moment. Ian Hart, I haven't actually picked Martin yet though. Ian Hart is the better defensive option. Again, free kicks and penalties helps him with attacking returns when Leeds are able to keep those clean sheets. Midfielders, there's loads of good options there, so it's hard to pick. So you can have a game where Harry Kewell does really well on the wing. One thing I should mention actually is I quite like it when a 4-4-2 team like Leeds play against a 3-5-2 team like Bolton or Birmingham. There's something in this game where, again, I think because of the gaps on the pitch where the wing back pushes forward, the left midfielder has an opportunity to do much better, and that's something that lots of people with the knowledge of this game try to attack. Viduka's a really good striker. He's miles better than Fowler. Smith doesn't play very often, is good when he does, but barely gets a sniff. Leeds can score high when they have the right fixture. Liverpool, defensive options. I think most weeks you'll see teams with lots of Sami Hyypiäs, lots of honchos. I prefer Risa over them. I don't see him get picked as much. Liverpool midfielders, they don't often get picked. There's too many of them. Obviously, we do get the starting lineup, so you can take punts on them, but I think I'm more focused on Liverpool getting a clean sheet than I am Liverpool scoring lots of goals. They don't seem to score lots of goals, only 9th best in the league. Obviously, there are weeks where your likes of Michael Owen are going to do really well. Emil Heskey's been sold, so probably more games from Barros or Juve up front now. Even though Smeets' numbers are slightly higher, I think Bruno Cheyrou is their best player. Steven Gerrard is not that good on this game, not many returns. Danny Murphy should be on penalties, so he's probably a better option as well. Man City, you probably don't want to pick Man City's defenders because they concede a lot of goals. However, Sunji Hai has had a few good games this season, and Steve Howie's on penalties. I always think their midfielders and strikers are an option, despite them not being a great team. Carboni and Benabia are very solid, often get lots of returns when the fixtures are right. Nicholas Anelka is a very good striker. Vioso can have good seasons, but has been fairly quiet on this one. Mainly an avoid, but I do see lots of teams having Carbone and Benabia in them, and they've got lots of returns this season, as you saw earlier in the kind of the player tables so far. Man United are the best team in the league. Silvestri is their best defender for me. Clearly scores a lot more points than the others. Midfielders have got so many options. I suppose the difficulty and frustration people have had this year is they pick Beckham for a fixture and maybe Veron's the one who delivers, or Giggs delivers, or Roy Keane delivers. So it is hard to pick the right one, but when you do get the right one, that's lots of points for you that other people won't be getting. Van Nistelrooy, we expected to be the highest owned player in the game. Lots of weeks he is. However, he's been quite disappointing this season, and you've seen lots of people go against Ruud. I found actually to pick Silvestri over Ruud on many occasions has helped me be where I am in the league, to be honest. Middlesbrough outperforming this year. Defenders are pretty well. The centre backs, Ekiog and Southgate, are good players on this game. Ekiog has pens, so you probably just edged it over Southgate this year. With the right fixture, nothing wrong with Middlesbrough defender. They are pretty solid. Johnston, the postman, seems to be delivering a lot in this sim. George Boateng can take penalties and is a fairly decent player too. Again, fixture dependent. Alan Boksic is a type of player that doesn't score for 8 games and then gets a hat-trick. There's not many players that go off in this game. Boksic can when the fixture's right, but avoid Middlesbrough strikers. Macaroni and Whelan aren't very good, and they don't often score. Just a random punt on Boksic when you think the time is right, I would say. Newcastle, underrated for me. They're a really good team. However, they really lack for defensive options. There's no one really that plays there that stands out. Quinn, Dabasas, Griffin, none of these players ever seem to do well for them. Kieran Dyer has been probably my most picked player this year. He's constant, he's steady, and often will get you an assist here and there. I think he's a good player to have. Speed, Basudas and Robert can also do well as well. Bellamy is not bad, but obviously Shearer edges it for me. Often pick up Alan Shearer in this. Is a favourite of everyone's and always a good player to own, no matter what the fixture for me. Always an option. Southampton are poor. If you had to pick a defender, pick Bridge, but they concede a lot of goals, so I probably wouldn't. Svensson is a good player, though. Again, with the right fixture, he is their better player by a mile and often gets good returns. If you think Southampton are going to get a goal or result, he's often involved. Paha's pretty bang average up front. Beattie looks like he's starting to play a bit more now. From owning him in me playing the game myself, I quite like Beattie as a player. So he's kind of one to watch as the season progresses. Sunderland are a great team. I like to pick a Sunderland player 99% of the time. Defensive options have been poor this year because they brought Ben Thatcher and Prutton and are playing them wing backs. That stops Mickey Gray or Julio Arca playing left back. I'm hoping that's something that will change as the season goes. Midfield is great options. Rayner is a really good player, one of the highest returns from midfielder. Piper, again, really good. Mickey Gray, Arca, who with those numbers are often playing in defence in other sims. Jason McAteer has popped up quite a few times in the sim. And Flo and Phillips are great. Not much between them. Flo's on penalties. Top players, you want to pick them whenever you get the opportunity to. Spurs, not bad actually. I think people expect them to be rubbish on this, but they're not too bad actually. Again, 6th for goals, 9th for against. I'd often pick the wing backs in defence. I think Stephen Carr was a popular player earlier on the season where he took a pen and scored, and Tottenham managed to keep a clean sheet. Ziga seems to be playing left back now. Darren Anderton actually seems to be playing the right wing back now, so they can be good options in those positions. Robbie Keane is the Spurs player I pick most of the time. I've had him in my team pretty much every week. I think he's the best midfielder in the game and scores more than Rebrov, who plays up front, and obviously get more points for a midfielder scoring than a striker. So yeah, Robbie Keane is the one for me. West Brom, very good defensively. Clement is their top scorer. Gregan, Chambers, Moore, Sigurdsson, they're all good players for West Brom. Midfielders do okay. They all kind of chip in. No one's massively over the top good. Kumas would be their best one, though. So if you're looking for West Brom player, I mean, I always lean towards the defenders, but I've seen people pick Kumas and Jason Robertson Hughes on the right weeks and get some good returns. West Ham, lastly, Laban has been a bit of a cult hero as he takes penalties for West Ham. Which no one really knew about before the start of the season. He's injured at the moment, but when he comes back with the right fixture, I'll punt on him occasionally. Joe Cole's a great player, really good in this game, and yeah, can get big returns. Haven't got Di Canio on there for some reason, but Canute, Defoe, Di Canio rotate between the 3 striking positions. So hard to call who plays, but when they do play with the right fixture, they can all go off. I probably prefer Canute, Defoe, then Di Canio, but I know a lot of people that prefer Defoe. So that's everything in terms of all the information you need for the second half league, really. I will post a video with Craig for the usual weekly sim data, but this is just kind of an extra video to help all existing players and new players into the game. Right. Thank you very much.